The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched endlessly, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 distant stars. Ambassador Chun-Wei stood at the human delegation's platform, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives of 200 alien civilizations. The Krillians floated in their water-filled tanks, their tentacles writhing with barely concealed contempt. The Vorthak delegation, 7 feet tall and covered in chitinous armor, clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. The terms remain unchanged, declared High Counselor X Theta, its 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Humanity will surrender 70% of its colonial territories, dismantle its military fleet, and submit to regular inspections by Council peacekeepers. Chen's jaw tightened. For 6 months, Earth's representatives had negotiated in good faith, offering compromises and seeking common ground. They had shared technology, opened trade routes, and even helped defend Council world from pirate raids. Yet at every turn, the other species demanded more concessions, more surrenders, treating humanity like a conquered race rather than an equal member. "We've given you our final offer," Chun said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Equal representation, fair trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. Nothing more, nothing less." The Vorthak ambassador, Krex-9, rose from its seat. "You dare speak of equality? Your species has existed for barely a heartbeat compared to ours. You stumbled into space travel by accident, and now you presume to demand equal standing with civilizations that have ruled the stars for millennia?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Etherians, beings of pure energy, pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. The silicon-based Quarians ground their crystalline bodies together in what Chun had learned was their version of applause. "Perhaps," said the melodious voice of Ambassador Lyralii from the Celestine Empire, "humanity needs another century or 2 of probationary status to learn proper respect for their betters." Chun felt the anger of her fellow humans through her neural implant. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, head of security, stood rigid behind her, his hand unconsciously moving toward where his sidearm would have been if weapons were allowed in the chamber. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, their chief scientist, had stopped taking notes, her stylus trembling with suppressed rage. "Respect," Chun repeated slowly, tasting the word like poison. "You speak of respect while you demand we grovel. You take our innovations, our trade goods, our protection, and give us nothing but contempt in return. Because that is what lesser species deserve," Krex-9 stated flatly. "You should be grateful we allow you to exist at all." The Vorthak Empire once exterminated civilizations for far less insolence than you've shown today. That was the moment everything changed. Chun straightened her shoulders, a strange calm settling over her. She touched the communication device at her throat, sending a coded message to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. "I see," she said quietly. "Then, we have nothing more to discuss." High Counselor Zoex Theta's tentacles writhed in confusion. "You accept our terms?" "No." Chun gathered her data tablets, motioning for her delegation to stand. "Humanity withdraws from these negotiations. Effective immediately, we are recalling all human personnel from Council space, closing our embassies, and terminating all treaties and trade agreements." The chamber erupted in chaos. Never in 10,000 years had a species simply walked away from the Galactic Council. Some representatives laughed, others shouted in outrage, and a few watched in stunned silence. "You cannot simply leave." ZYX Theta's voice boomed through the translation systems. "The Council forbids it." Chun paused at the exit, turning back one final time. "The Council has made it clear that humanity has no place here as equals. So we'll make our own way. Good luck, Counselor. You'll need it." As the human delegation departed, the laughter in the chamber gradually died. The Celestine Empire's economy specialist was the first to speak, its voice trembling. "Wait, if they close the trade routes through human space, 60% of our supply lines will be cut off," finished the Krillian representative, its skin turning pale. The Vorthak ambassador scoffed. Let them go. We don't need their pathetic contributions. But others were already accessing their data systems, and what they found sent waves of panic through the assembly. Human engineers maintained the quantum communication relays that connected half the galaxy. Human medical research had provided breakthrough treatments for a dozen different plague outbreaks. Human agricultural techniques had ended famines on world after world. More troubling still were the military implications. Humanity's primitive fleet had somehow managed to be everywhere at once, patrolling trade routes that other species found too dangerous or unprofitable. Their soldiers, dismissed as weak by many species standards, had proven remarkably effective at asymmetric warfare and peacekeeping operations. They can't survive without us, Crex9 insisted. They'll come crawling back within a cycle, begging for readmission. But as reports began flooding in of human vessels jumping to hyperspace, of human workers leaving their posts, of human colonies going dark to outside communication, a terrible realization began to dawn on the Galactic Council. They'd spent so long looking down on humanity, so long treating them as inferiors to be exploited, that they had never truly understood what humans brought to the table. And now, as the first economic projections appeared on the Council screens, showing market crashes and supply chain collapses across dozens of sectors, they began to realize their mistake. The humans weren't leaving because they were weak. They were leaving because they were strong enough to survive on their own. And the galaxy was about to learn just how much it had depended on the species it had spurned. The exodus happened faster than anyone anticipated. Within 72 hours of Ambassador Chen's declaration, human ships began vanishing from Council space like stars winking out at dawn. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the cargo hauler Perseverance, watching the traffic patterns around Kepler Station, humanity's largest trading post in Council space. That's the last of the civilian transports, her navigator reported. The Shanghai Dream just jumped to hyperspace with 8,000 colonists aboard. Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Hundreds of ships had already departed, carrying millions of humans back to Earth-controlled space. But her job wasn't done yet. The Perseverance and her sister ships had one final task: evacuating the human technical teams that kept Council infrastructure running. Captain, her communications officer called out, we're getting dozens of priority messages from Council worlds. They're demanding to know why our technical teams aren't responding to maintenance requests. Ignore them, Elena ordered. Our people, our rules. Begin final evacuation procedures. On the surface of Thraxia Prime, Chief Engineer Michael Okafor supervised the shutdown of the atmosphere processing plant he'd managed for 5 years. The facility provided breathable air for the methane-breathing Thraxians, converting their toxic atmosphere in the human sectors, and vice versa. Sir, one of his technicians said nervously, the Thraxian overseer is here. He's upset. Michael could see why. Overseer Grix stood outside the facility's gates, his 4 arms waving frantically. Without the translation matrix that humans had installed and maintained, his words were just incomprehensible shrieking. Pack it up, Michael told his team. Leave the basic systems running, but take the adaptation algorithms and maintenance protocols. They want to treat us like servants? Let them figure out how to keep it running themselves. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the ice world of Jelix, human miners shut down the exotic matter extractors that powered Council hyperdrives. In the Sagittarius shipyards, human engineers removed the proprietary software that allowed different species technologies to interface seamlessly. Agricultural worlds found their crop optimization systems suddenly offline, reverting to the inefficient methods they'd used before human involvement. The Council's initial response was predictably arrogant. High Counselor Zuix Theta issued a decree declaring the human withdrawal illegal and threatening sanctions. The Vorthak Empire sent warships to blockade human colonies, demanding they return to their obligations. That lasted exactly until the warships discovered their navigation systems could no longer calculate jump coordinates through certain regions of space. Regions where human-maintained navigational beacons had gone mysteriously silent. "It's not possible." Admiral Craig 7 of the Vorthack fleet snarled at his subordinates. "How can they shut down beacons in neutral space?" His navigation officer's scales had turned pale with fear. "Sir, the beacons are still there. They're just not responding to our access codes. Only human ships seem to be able to use them." The Admiral's compound eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you telling me the humans built backdoors into critical infrastructure?" "It appears so, sir. And not just the beacons. Reports are coming in from across Council space. Systems are failing, but only for non-human users." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Earth's leadership convened an emergency session. President Sarah Martinez addressed the assembled representatives of humanity's colonies and fleet commanders via quantum link. "The die is cast," she said firmly. "Operation autonomy is in effect. All human assets are to be withdrawn or secured. We tried to join them as equals, and they spat in our faces. Now we'll show them what humanity can accomplish on its own." General Chun Lu, Earth's military commander, presented the strategic situation. "We've successfully evacuated 93% of our civilian population from Council space. Military assets are holding at designated rally points, ready to escort the final convoys home." "What about Council retaliation?" asked Governor Yuki Tanaka from New Tokyo Colony. "That's where it gets interesting," Dr. James Crawford, head of intelligence, interjected. "The Council is already experiencing what we predicted. Economic indicators show a 12% drop in interstellar trade volume in just 3 days. Critical shortages are being reported in medical supplies, processed foods, and technical components." The president leaned forward. "How long before they realize the full scope?" "Our models suggest 2 weeks before partial economic collapse in the inner Council worlds," Dr. Crawford replied. 6 weeks for the outer territories. They built their entire infrastructure around human efficiency and innovation, then treated us like disposable labor. They're about to learn how disposable we really were." But the true shock came from an unexpected source. Deep in unexplored space, where humanity had secretly established forward bases over the past decade, something stirred. Research stations that the Council never knew existed powered up their experimental drives. Mining operations on asteroids the Council had deemed worthless began extracting rare elements using human-developed techniques. Captain Marcus Webb commanded one such hidden installation, Research Station Prometheus, located in a nebula that Council sensors couldn't penetrate. For 3 years, his team had been developing technologies in secret, preparing for the day humanity might need to stand alone. "Status report," he called out as his staff rushed to their stations. "Genesis protocol is active, sir," Lieutenant Commander Patel reported. "All hidden facilities are confirming receipt of the activation code. Project Breakout is proceeding on schedule." Webb smiled grimly. The Council thought they knew humanity's capabilities, but they'd only seen what humans had chosen to share. The real innovations, the technologies that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, had been kept in reserve. "Send word to Earth Command," Webb ordered. "Phase 2 begins now. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can do when we're not holding back." As the last human ship departed Council space, leaving behind empty stations and silent facilities, the first reports of strange energy signatures began to appear on long-range sensors. Ships of unknown configuration, using propulsion systems that defied Council understanding of physics. Signals from parts of space that were supposed to be empty. The comfortable, orderly galaxy the Council had known for millennia was about to change forever. And at the center of that change was the species they had dismissed as primitive and unworthy. Humanity was no longer asking for a seat at the table. They were building their own table. And the galaxy would soon learn that it was far grander than anything the Council had imagined. 3 weeks after humanity's exodus, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session unlike any in recorded history. The Great Chamber, once filled with confident voices and dismissive laughter, now buzzed with panic and recrimination. Economic graphs projected on the central display showed red indicators across every sector, plunging lines that represented the collapse of 10,000 years of prosperity. High Counselor Vex Theta's tentacles drooped with exhaustion as it addressed the assembly. The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. Without human maintenance, 40% of our hyperspace beacons are now non-functional. Trade routes that took days to traverse now require weeks of dangerous navigation. The medical crisis is worse, interrupted Dr. Solara of the Etherian Collective, her energy form flickering with distress. The Proxima Plague has resurged on 17 worlds. Without human-developed vaccines and their rapid response medical teams, we project 8 million casualties within the next cycle. Ambassador Crex9 slammed his armored fist on his podium. This is unacceptable. Send the fleets. Force them to return. With what navigational systems? The voice belonged to Admiral Thylex of the Krillian Navy, floating in her mobile tank. Half our ships are stranded in deep space, unable to calculate safe jump coordinates. The humans didn't just maintain our beacons. They were the only ones who truly understood the mathematical models behind them. The revelation that humanity had been deliberately simplifying their explanations of hyperspace physics for easier understanding by other species had been particularly galling. Council scientists were now struggling to comprehend theories that human graduate students considered elementary. Perhaps, suggested the melodious voice of Ambassador Lyralii, though it lacked its usual condescension, we should attempt diplomatic contact. Surely they would negotiate now that they've made their point. We've tried, ZYX Theta admitted. All communications to human space are met with automated responses. They acknowledge receipt, but state that humanity has no interest in further dialogue with the Council. What the Council didn't know was that humanity was listening to every word. In the hidden command center of Prometheus Station, intelligence officers monitored Council communications while Earth's leadership watched via secure link. They're starting to crack, observed General Chun-Lu. Should we respond to their overtures? President Martinez shook her head. Not yet. They still don't understand. Look at them. Even now, they're talking about forcing us back, about teaching us a lesson. They haven't learned anything. She was right. In the council chamber, voices were already rising in anger rather than reflection. The humans are parasites, declared the representative from the Skorax hegemony. They infiltrated our systems, made us dependent on them, all as part of some elaborate plot. Plot. The usually silent ambassador from the ancient Yith race finally spoke, its crystalline form resonating with something like amusement. The only plot was your own arrogance. We Yith warned the Council centuries ago that treating younger species as inferiors would have consequences. You laughed at us then. Because it worked for 10 millennia, Crex9 protested. Every new species accepted their place, earned their position through service and submission. Why should the humans be different? Because, the Yith ambassador continued, humans possess something you've bred out of yourselves through eons of complacency, ambition coupled with innovation. While you were content to maintain the status quo, they were constantly asking what if and why not. And now you're seeing the result. But the true shock came when long-range sensors detected massive energy signature from the Perseus arm, a region of space the Council had declared off-limits due to navigational hazards. Scout ships sent to investigate returned with imagery that sent shockwaves through the assembly. Cities, massive orbital installations, fleets of ships using technology that shouldn't exist, an entire civilization that had been built in secret. Impossible, whispered ZYX Theta. The Perseus arm is unnavigable. The gravitational anomalies, the dark matter storms. Admiral Thylex's analysis was grim. Unless someone found a way to navigate them, or worse, to harness them. The human colonies in the Perseus arm represented only a fraction of what humanity had accomplished in secret. While maintaining their presence in Council space, humans had been executing a century-long contingency plan. They had studied Council technology, improved upon it, and developed entirely new branches of science that the older species had dismissed as impossible. On Earth, President Martinez authorized the release of carefully edited footage to the Council. The transmission showed human cities that defied gravity, powered by energy sources that violated Council understanding of physics. Ships that could traverse the galaxy in days rather than weeks. Medical technology that made Council treatments look medieval by comparison. This is what we built while you were debating whether we deserve basic respect, the President's recorded message stated. We asked to join you as equals. You refused, so we built something better. The impact was immediate and devastating. Minor species that had been under Council domination for millennia began questioning why they should remain. If humanity could build such wonders independently, why couldn't they? The first defection came from the Altarians, a species that had provided mineral resources to the Council for 3,000 years. Their ambassador stood before the assembly, his iridescent scales shifting with determination. The Altarian Commonwealth formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, he announced. We will seek trade agreements with the human collective instead. You can't. ZYX Theta's voice reached a pitch that threatened to shatter the chamber's crystalline walls. The Council forbids it. The Council, the Altarian replied, no longer has the power to forbid anything. Your fleets can't navigate. Your economies are in ruins. Your populations are dying from diseases you've forgotten how to cure. The humans showed us that there's another way. One by one, other species began announcing their intentions. The Redhan Consortium, the Bellerophon Alliance, even some worlds from the mighty Vorthak Empire itself, colonies that had chafed under imperial rule for generations. Krex9's rage was apocalyptic. Traitors will burn your worlds to ash. With what fleet? The question came from his own military advisor. Half our ships are stranded. The other half can't coordinate attacks without the tactical networks the humans maintained. And even if we could reach the rebel worlds, we'd face human technology that surpasses our own. The bitter truth was beginning to sink in. The Council hadn't just lost humanity. They had lost their monopoly on galactic civilization. The very structure they had maintained for 10,000 years was crumbling, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. But worse news was yet to come. Deep space monitoring stations detected movement from beyond the galactic rim, from regions of space that were thought to be empty. Energy signatures that matched no known technology, but seemed somehow familiar. By the void, the Yith ambassador whispered, its crystalline form vibrating with something that might have been fear. They found others. The transmission that arrived shortly after confirmed their worst fears. It came on human frequencies, but spoke in languages the Council had never heard. The message was simple, translated by human linguists for Council consumption. The human collective has made contact with the extragalactic civilizations of the Andromeda Coalition. We have found beings who understand the value of equality and mutual respect. Together, we will build a future based on cooperation, not domination. The image that accompanied the message showed human diplomats standing alongside beings of impossible beauty and terrifying power, species from another galaxy entirely, working together as equals. In the Council chamber, silence reigned. The assembled representatives of 200 species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia faced a truth they could no longer deny. They were no longer the supreme power in the galaxy. They were relics of a dying age, watching as younger, more dynamic civilizations rose to take their place. And at the heart of this transformation were the humans they had scorned, now standing as bridges between galaxies, proving that respect and cooperation could accomplish what arrogance and domination never could. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of something far greater was about to begin. 6 months after the Exodus, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The once mighty Galactic Council now controlled less than a third of their former territory. Their meetings reduced to bitter arguments over dwindling resources and failed attempts to maintain order. Meanwhile, the human collective had grown from a dismissed minor species to the center of a new galactic order. Ambassador Chunwei, the same woman who had walked out of the Council chambers, now stood in the Hall of Unity on Haven Prime, humanity's new diplomatic capital in the Perseus Arm. But she wasn't alone. Representatives from 57 species stood with her, including many who had defected from the Council and others who had been discovered in previously unexplored regions of space. The future isn't built on dominance, Chen addressed the assembly, her words being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. It's built on cooperation, innovation, and mutual respect. Every species here, regardless of age or technological advancement, has an equal voice. The Altarian ambassador, his scales shimmering with excitement, presented his people's breakthrough in mineral extraction, enhanced by human quantum theory. The Rithans demonstrated new agricultural techniques that combined their biological expertise with human genetic engineering. Even species from the Andromeda Coalition shared technologies that defied conventional physics. But the true power of the human collective wasn't technological, it was philosophical. Where the Council had demanded conformity, humans celebrated diversity. Where the Council had hoarded knowledge, humans shared it freely. In the old Council space, the consequences of their arrogance had become catastrophic. The Vorthak Empire, once spanning 100 systems, had fragmented into warring factions as their economy collapsed. Without human-maintained supply chains, outer colonies faced starvation. Without human medical support, plagues ran rampant through their populations. High Counselor X Theta, in what would be its final official address, stood before the remnants of the Galactic Council. Its tentacles, once vibrant with authority, now hung limp with defeat. "We have received a communication from a human collective," it announced, its voice barely above a whisper. "They offer humanitarian aid to our suffering populations. Medical supplies, food, technical assistance. No conditions, no demands for submission. It's a trick." Krex 9, demoted from his ambassador position after losing half the Vorthak fleet to navigational failures, snarled from his seat. "They want us weak before they strike. They already won," the Yith ambassador interjected. "They don't need to strike. They're offering aid because that's what mature civilizations do. Something we forgot long ago." The debate that followed was fierce, but ultimately meaningless. Pride couldn't feed starving populations or cure diseases. One by one, Council worlds began accepting human aid, each package of supplies coming with simple instructions and a standing offer. "When you're ready to join as equals, not rulers, you're welcome." On Earth, President Martinez met with the expanded Leadership Council, which now included representatives from allied species and the Andromedan Coalition. The transformation of humanity from galactic outcasts to leaders of a new order had happened with stunning speed, but not without challenges. "The integration is proceeding well," reported Dr. Anika Johansson, Director of Interspecies Affairs. "The Andromedans are particularly interested in our approach to problem-solving. Apparently, their galaxy suffered similar issues with hierarchical thinking until a crisis forced change 3,000 years ago." "What about the Council worlds?" asked General Chun Lu. "Are we prepared for potential military action?" Admiral Sofia Reyes, now commanding a fleet that incorporated technologies from a dozen different species, shook her head. "They can't mount any serious offensive. Half their ships still can't navigate, and the half that can are busy trying to maintain order in their collapsing territories. Besides, our new allies have made it clear that any attack on humanity is an attack on the collective." But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Crawford, head of intelligence, presented findings that had emerged from decoded Council archives, released by defecting bureaucrats. "It seems we weren't the first species to attempt this," he explained, projecting historical documents. 8,000 years ago, a species called the Zenari tried to reform the Council from within. They were crushed, their technology suppressed, their colonies scattered. The Council learned to prevent future challenges by keeping new species dependent and subservient. "So we were never meant to be equals," President Martinez mused. "The system was designed to exploit us from the beginning." "Exactly. But they didn't count on us building alternatives in secret, or on us finding allies beyond their reach. The true extent of humanity's influence became clear when the first intergalactic science symposium convened on Haven Prime. Scientists from both galaxies shared knowledge freely, sparking innovations that would have taken centuries to develop in isolation. Human physicists worked with Andromedan energy specialists to develop power sources that could sustain entire star systems. Altarian mineralogists collaborated with human engineers to create materials that could withstand the stresses of intergalactic travel. Most remarkably, younger members of Council species began defecting not to escape hardship, but because they were inspired. The rigid hierarchies that had defined their civilizations for millennia suddenly seemed archaic compared to the dynamic creativity of the human collective. Lieutenant Varji, a young Krillian who had defected with her entire research team, explained to a documentary crew, "In the Council, I would have spent centuries as a junior researcher, waiting for my superiors to die before I could pursue my own theories. Here, they gave me a laboratory and told me to follow my curiosity. In 6 months, I've accomplished more than my entire bloodline did in 1,000 years." Similar stories emerge from across the collective. The son of a Vorthack general, working alongside human engineers to develop new propulsion systems. A Celestine artist, collaborating with human musicians to create forms of expression neither culture could have imagined alone. Even some Etherians, beings of pure energy who had considered themselves above material concerns, found joy in working with humans to explore the intersection of consciousness and technology. The tipping point came when the human collective announced the completion of the Bridge Project, a stable wormhole connecting the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. In the span of a year, humanity had accomplished what the Council had deemed impossible for 10 millennia. Standing before the assembled dignitaries at the bridge's inauguration, Ambassador Chun Wei delivered a message that was broadcast across both galaxies. "A year ago, we asked for equality and were offered servitude. We sought partnership and were given contempt. So we chose a different path. Not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Not to dominate, but to demonstrate that there's a better way." She paused, looking directly at the camera transmitting to Council space. "To those still clinging to the old ways, we say this. The invitation remains open. Abandon your hierarchies, embrace equality, and join us in building a future where every species, every individual, has the opportunity to reach their full potential. But understand this clearly, the galaxy no longer waits for your permission to progress." In the dying halls of the Galactic Council, ZYX Theta watched the transmission with what remained of the Council leadership. The Great Chamber, once filled with hundreds of representatives, now held fewer than 20. The rest had either defected, retreated to their homeworlds, or simply stopped attending. "Perhaps," the High Counselor said quietly, "it's time we admitted the truth. We didn't lose because humanity tricked us or because they had secret weapons. We lost because we forgot that leadership isn't about forcing others to follow. It's about inspiring them to join you." Even Crex 9, his armor dulled by months of failure and loss, couldn't muster anger anymore. "What do we do now?" "We do what we should have done from the beginning," YX Theta replied. "We learn." The message that the Galactic Council sent to the human collective was brief, but historic. The Galactic Council formally dissolves itself and requests membership in the collective as individual species, ready to learn, contribute, and grow as equals. The response came within hours, not from any government official, but from a human child on Haven Prime who had been chosen by lottery to represent humanity's future. "Welcome to the family. Let's build something amazing together." As news of the Council's dissolution spread, celebrations erupted across both galaxies. Not celebrations of conquest, but of possibility. The old order, built on dominance and exploitation, had finally given way to something new. But for humanity, this was just the beginning. With the bridge operational and allies in 2 galaxies, the universe suddenly seemed full of infinite possibilities. There were more galaxies to explore, more civilizations to meet, more challenges to overcome. And this time, humanity wouldn't be doing it alone. They had proven that respect, innovation, and cooperation could triumph over arrogance and tradition. They had shown the galaxy that true strength came not from forcing others to kneel, but from helping them to stand. The age of humanity had begun, not as conquerors or rulers, but as catalysts for change, bridges between worlds, and architects of a future where every species could thrive. In the end, the galaxy hadn't started to fear humanity's power. They had begun to fear being left behind as humanity, and its allies rushed toward a future brighter than anything the old council had ever imagined.